and startup community. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite to the podium a gentleman from a company which was created a little bit earlier than 1993. I would like to invite to the podium Mr. Marc Van Zadelhoff, General Manager of IBM Security. Can't you do something with your last name to make life more easy for me? And IBM is, now we are going to be exposed again to short, shameless Zionist propaganda. How many people you have in Israel? You know by any chance?
Hundreds.
Not hundreds, thousands.
Oh, IBM has thousands. IBM Security has hundreds.
No,
yes.
no, but IBM has thousands.
Thousands,
IBM
yes.
acquired, I think, 12 or 13
Correct.
companies in Israel. They created here a center of excellence for storage, right?
Yeah.
You employ hundreds of people in the cyber, and IBM is one of 400 major leading international companies which set excellence, Center for Excellence in Israel. Among the other ones are companies like Microsoft, Facebook, Google, AOL, Intuit, Cisco, you name them. And it's really very nice to be here. I don't, maybe instead of the lecture you prepared on cybersecurity, you can tell us why IBM is so active in Israel. Like, we are wonderful, etc. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to have our country general manager, Danny, in the front row as well. So we've built an amazing business here in Israel, and it is a pleasure to be here. I have a tough position in the agenda. I'm following Gil, a renowned Israeli entrepreneur, and right before Udi, who is going to come up from CyberArk. So I'm sort of the non-Israeli in an Israeli sandwich here on stage. It's a pleasure to be here. About 6 years ago, we started IBM's cybersecurity business, and I'm proud to say that we've grown to about 8,000 people and over between $2 and $3 billion in revenue. And so it's really nice to be part of a US-Israeli startup within IBM. I think we've talked a lot today about the downside of the dark world that we all are trying to defend against. I wanted to spend a few minutes today, as an IBMer, talking about something positive. And I know that's very unusual here at a cybersecurity conference, but I thought I would start there. I have the immense pleasure of working at a company that is trying to figure out how technology can make the planet a much better place for all of us to live. I sit in Kendall Square right next to MIT in IBM's office where our cybersecurity business is headquartered, but also our Watson Health business is headquartered. And when you're sitting there at the coffee machine interacting with some of my colleagues from Watson Health, you really start to get a sense of the future and what technology can do. In fact, I was at the coffee machine the other day talking to a doctor that had literally taken Watson for oncology. All of us have somebody in our family or friends that has cancer. The power of what IBM has done with Watson for oncology, where over 50,000 patients have been diagnosed leveraging this technology. The other day I was in our headquarters in New York and talking to some of our team members from our blockchain unit, getting detailed descriptions of how we're doing projects on blockchain to try and solve hard problems like how to make the shipping industry more effective. So you get to kind of sit in the kitchen and see all the recipes of this new technology that is being used to actually do something positive for our society. And this picture right behind me is an actual quantum computer. And I was standing about this close to that quantum computer a few weeks ago, and I thought, geez, you know, not a lot of people have actually seen a quantum computer. I was going to say that I touched the quantum computer, but I didn't touch it because I think it is pretty easy to break. This thing, when it's working, this is about an 8-qubit quantum computer. You put a cover on it, and they cool it down to pretty much 0 Kelvin, absolute zero, and then it starts doing its magic. IBM has put one of these into the IBM cloud. I think this is about an 8-qubit machine. We're working on ones that are more like 4 or 5 times as large, as fast. And the potential of the quantum computer, you've all read about it. It's here now, and it is amazing to be at a company where we're starting to see what that can do for good. But of course, as we all know, anything that is used for good can also be used to try and attack. So, we are on the crux, and it's a cliche to say, of an exponential growth of what is happening in technology. And you see here in terms of the years, we're living right now on the flatter parts of some of this curve. If you look at the Metcalfe's law and all the different thoughts that we have around the growth of technology, we're just getting going. Connected devices are one. And in the global data sphere, today, only about 10 to 15% of all the data out there is being ingested to make decisions with artificial intelligence. This is going to expand immensely as AI becomes pervasive, becomes more than for a single application, but really can start to be something that changes how we make decisions in our society. I'm seeing this one industry at a time, as I've described, for example, with Watson for oncology, and I'll describe within our cybersecurity unit, but we ain't seen nothing yet. Objects are closer than they appear. So, that is what gets me out of bed in the morning, the excitement and the potential of technology in our society. And then you wake up in the morning and you open the newspaper. I don't actually have a newspaper anymore. I read the iPads and New York Times app. And this is the kind of headlines that we're seeing, right? And we've seen this across many of the different presentations, and I won't bore you with those headlines. But I want to step back and let's have a chance to be a little honest with each other. When you go and delve into each of those breaches, WannaCry, Equifax, Petya, not Petya, and sometimes my teams get sent out in an emergency to go and try and help what's happening out there. If we're honest with ourselves as an industry, and Gil did such a nice job talking about the many different generations of cybersecurity, you still encounter this in the marketplace. Untuned firewalls, no sense of where critical data is, basic logging not being analyzed, completely ignoring privilege and the effect of privilege on the system, default passwords being used, completely flat networks that have not been segmented, no incident response plan, and underutilized tools in the environment. That is the reality as I get so excited about the state of technology and we know the state of the threat landscape. Still, we are struggling to get some of the basics done in our environments. And it's sort of time to move on. It's sort of time to get this problem solved because there is a war coming of good AI versus bad AI. This is clear if you look at the way some of the malware is built now. We're seeing malware that is specifically designed to morph. We have designed experimental malware that only turns on when it recognizes the image of a certain user. You imagine if WannaCry had had artificial intelligence that only turned on when it saw the picture of a certain number of victims that it wanted to turn on and attack. We would not have detected it for a long period of time because it would have been dormant until it found exactly the person it wanted to attack. These things are capable. Hackers are working on this. Safety is at risk, as you've seen today, with the member of the Israeli government talking about IoT and the attacks happening there on the critical infrastructure, and of course, we have a skills shortage. And still, this is the smorgasbord of technologies that you find. And with all respect to the startup nation and to the show floor out here, I think sometimes we are totally convinced that we are one startup away from solving the cybersecurity problem. And it's a lot harder than that. And I love startups. I came from a startup and we've acquired 20 of them, but it is a more complex problem. So let me tell you the 3 areas that IBM Security, with lots of partners, many of you in the audience, is working on. The first is to treat security as a system, an immune system. It is not enough to focus on just certain technologies that I showed on the prior slide and hope that with that one piece of new technology, that one new invention coming from a lab here in Israel, that this problem is going to go away. What we've been talking with our customers about for many years now, since we started the security business in 2012, is to think of security as an immune system. And you've seen iterations of this from various presenters. But when customers start thinking holistically about security, and implementing an immune system where the technologies work together, it makes a massive difference. And I've seen this, I've seen my teams go and do this at customers, and they really take up their posture, get those basics right, and start doing more than that. So the first priority is treat security like an immune system, like an internet-connected set of capabilities, again, in part inspired by our own body's immune system. The second part I wanted to spend a couple minutes on is artificial intelligence. And here you can see my shameless plug of our portfolio, but what we've been doing across the portfolio is either natively or after the fact, adding artificial intelligence everywhere. And it makes a massive difference. It makes a difference not just for getting the basics done, but taking security to a new level. And I thought I'd give you just a couple of examples of how I see AI impacting our customers. And the first is Watson for Cyber. We announced this here last year, and it has had an amazing first year. Watson, we trained, inspired by Watson for Oncology, which was learning and reading everything about cancer and helping doctors make a diagnosis of patients. Well, if you think about it, there's a scarcity of good oncologists. There's a massive scarcity of skills in the SOC, in the Security Operations Center. Watson for Cyber is now used by almost 100 customers around the world. It takes an incident in the SOC and tells it, the analyst, what it knows. It is reducing the amount of time that an analyst has to spend on an incident. Instead of doing maybe 10 incidents a day, analysts are now able to do 30, 40 incidents a day with Watson for Cyber. It has ingested millions of documents. It's reading every blog that's being published, 60,000 blogs being published in cybersecurity a month. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot read 60,000 blogs a month. Watson does. Watson doesn't get tired. Watson doesn't have attention deficit order. Watson doesn't forget. And all of that data goes into its corpus and gets imposed onto over the shoulder of our analysts at our customers. So this is a great example, I think, of AI beyond the marketing use of the term AI really happening in our environment. Second example would be some of the things that we've done around user behavior or insider threat, using 3 different types of machine learning on top of the data that you ingest into our platform, QRadar, where all of a sudden you are immediately able to see which users have been taken over by hackers, credentials that have been stolen. I have over 2,000 customers that have downloaded and are using our user behavior analytics capability. We made this available on our App Exchange, and I can tell you, when customers are in the middle of a breach, it's one of the first things they turn to, because as you all know, hackers infiltrate, and before you know it, they're insiders, and the whole perimeter doesn't matter one bit. The machine learning and AI and technology like this is making a massive difference across 2,000 customers. And then the final example, by the way, some of that machine learning developed here in Israel. AppScan, the next one I wanted to show, and the last one, also developed here in Israel out of our lab in Herzliya. We developed a whole bunch of machine learning where we trained our application scanning technology to reduce false positives. As some of you know, talk about the basics. Getting applications secure is one of those basics. How do you get less false positives in these platforms? That is one of the biggest turnoffs when you go to the development teams, deploy some of this technology. They have tons of false positives. They don't know what to do with it. This reduces this by 98% based on all sorts of machine learning algorithms that we built into the platform. So as I mentioned, we have an ecosystem of apps that are driven by artificial intelligence. We partner with many of the companies here, including the previous speaker and the next one, that have built apps in our ecosystem, more than 50,000 downloads of these apps onto our platforms, BigFix, QRadar, et cetera, Resilient, and it makes a big difference in how you get the job done. So the final thing, beyond AI, beyond the immune system, is to prepare for the inevitable. And here, I invite everybody here to come to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we opened our Cyber Command Center, which is a full simulation environment. We've had a great time. We've had over 1,000 customers come through that Cyber Command Center since we opened it up January 1st, 2017. And man, the lessons that you learn post the boom event that happens there. So basically the scenario in the command center is you come there, you bring your team, and we simulate what it's like to go through an attack. Everybody is great before the attack. Everybody is thought through prevention and detection. That's what you do all day long. But then we drop the event in there, and we watch as the customers squirm with what happens after the boom. What's the response plan? What's the statement for the reporter that's sitting down the lobby? What am I going to say on camera? How do I talk to the regulators? How do I notify the customers? Are the letters ready? This is a wonderful sweat-inducing moment in the command center as everybody's trying to figure out what the hell to do right of boom. And I think it makes a big difference when you think about that aspect of your cybersecurity, leveraging the immune system, leveraging AI, and prepare for the inevitable by preparing with response. And this is why we acquired resilient systems and have over 150 different run books for every different regulatory environment, including GDPR, including all the different attack types to make sure that you know how to respond when the shit hits the fan. So finally, I will conclude by saying that I work, as Dr. Yossi said, for a young company called IBM, and IBM has a history of making massive bets. And you see some of them listed here on the board. And IBM, as you saw in our earnings announcements, we continue to reinvent the company around these big bets that we're making. And I won't go through all of them here, but you're familiar, and many of them have impacted our personal lives. I'm lucky enough to be at IBM in a moment where they're making big bets on quantum computing, on blockchain, on healthcare, as I mentioned, on cognitive, and on cybersecurity. These are the big bets and the big growth engines of the IBM of the next 107 years. And of course, I'm also honored to be here in Tel Aviv with all of you, wedged between two Israeli entrepreneurs, to thank you all for providing that innovative engine. IBM Security and IBM, as Dr. Yossi mentioned, have been very committed here to Israel. We have hundreds of researchers and employees here. I spent yesterday in the new IBM Security Tower, the IBM Trusteer Tower in the middle of Tel Aviv, where we have a new office building for all of our teams in security. We have QRadar development happening and some of the apps that I showed you, especially when it relates to artificial intelligence. We have many members of the Guardian team, of course, a huge team from Trusteer that has grown immensely since we acquired the company. Trusteer is the center of our SaaS efforts, our malware efforts, and of course, protecting companies from sophisticated fraud. We have our research lab in Haifa, and tomorrow I'm headed down for the first time to Beersheba to announce the opening of a new center of excellence down there with Ben Gurion University. So I appreciate the partnership with the State of Israel. Thank you all for hosting me, and have a great event.